Hey everybody, welcome to the FreeMind Podcast, the realest thing on the internet. There are no scripts, there is no agenda, there are no pre-written questions, there's no boardroom meetings. This is two people connecting in real time. Let's check it out.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Joshua Kagan. I'm the founder and CEO of Bonfire. We started this company in 2022. Bonfire's mission is to democratize access to commercial real estate. For many people, the biggest source of wealth they'll ever have is owning a house. That is part of the American dream. Unfortunately, that's becoming an American myth because of student debt and interest rates jumping as fast as they have, et cetera. And so we wanted to make it easy for everyday people to be able to invest in commercial real estate. And we do that by working with real estate operators and tokenizing an investment into their deals. So with tokenization, we can chop up the investment into smaller units and enable everyday people who otherwise wouldn't have commercial real estate as part of their portfolio access to these deals.
That's fantastic. And I've seen in the past, obviously we just met just now. So just for full context, we're 6 minutes in on our relationship here, but I did watch a few videos of yours in the past so that I could understand your business. And you've used in the past the terminology, the Robinhood for real estate. Elaborate on that. I think that's a really easy way, with Robinhood being so prevalent in the media and things like that in the past few years, to help people understand exactly what it is you do.
Yeah, it's tricky because when I started using the Robinhood for real estate, it was before the GameStop and sort of AMC.
I love the term. Yeah.
So it kind of has different connotations now. But the idea, what I liked about Robinhood when it came out as a platform, is it made it much easier for everyday people to invest in stocks into crypto. And in zero fee model, which really revolutionized the industry. And it really, and the name Robinhood is a name that stands for good historically. Now, whether they still embody that or not is a different question. But we wanted to make it really simple and easy and transparent for everyday people to invest in real estate.
Awesome. And how do you see technology transforming the real estate industry, investment landscape as a whole, and kind of considering with your background also with fintech and everything like that, kind of where do you see those X and Y axes crossing and helping that fuel progress?
Yes, I'm going to give you kind of an unexpected answer. And that is, like, I'm not one of these people, even though I'm like a tech founder or co-founder, like I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, tech is going to revolutionize the world and solve all of our problems. Like, tech is a fucking tool, right? And tools are only as good as the people who use them or how they use them, right? I can use this knife to like cut a piece of butter, or I can use it to stab someone. There's nothing inherently good or bad about the knife, right? So like this idea that like, oh, tech is here to save us, like I don't buy that, nor do I believe that like, oh, tech is here to kill us. So with regards to like the real estate industry, like real estate industry is, it is a very, very old industry that's dominated by basically like old white dudes who are not tech enabled, right? So like we've seen like a significant, like distinct lack of innovation in real estate over the last several decades. And I don't know that that's going to change overnight. I think that like there is innovation. I'm not discounting that, but like, I think for us, it's less about our tech and more about like how we're solving our customers' problems. That's kind of how I think about it.
Well, I appreciate that perspective, and that's we're in the same boat when it comes to let's say take AI for example. We're getting too wound up with the AI taking over the world as much as the embracing of, for me personally, the past 6+ months. A friend of mine, John, he recently got into it right in the very beginning of it. Excuse me. Long story short, and I've ingrained it into my phone, into everything in my life. And do I use it to think for me? No. What I use it for is it's my T89 Texas calculator, and it now is a place where in the mornings my conceptual brain can put things in. It can organize my thoughts that I put into it, and all those hours I spent with my ADHD brain and all my craziness, wasting overthinking things and overanalyzing which words should be where. I put my thoughts in there. I tell it where I want it to go, and I'm off to the races for the day. And I use it all day long. And whether it's like to find this information, to find that information, it's not to do my job for me. I don't need to prove to myself to go research something. I know how to research it. I don't need to prove myself to write something. I know how to write it. Now it's a tool that can do all those things I know how to do faster and allow me to be a human being and go to the next level. And I firmly believe, and I don't want to get too existential, but I firmly believe that when taken with the tool mentality of things like AI and technology, we then can go to the next level of creativity and progress, and then see the next and get off this plateau that we've been on.
Okay, I got two questions for you then. First of all, because I have ADHD, I was just diagnosed about 2 months ago.
I'm supposed to have an appointment later today. I have to meet somebody for undiagnosed. So,
and I was prescribed Adderall, and I was like, as sort of someone who has addiction tendencies, I found that Adderall was too fun, I was too efficient on it, that I was like, I need to actually get off this thing. But that's a whole separate topic. What AI tools are you using to make you more productive?
So I'm by no means a guru that is all linked up with a workflow. I'm still very rudimentary and basic, and I'm intentionally staying in an analog level so that I can understand how they communicate to each other and the voids and the gaps that are in there. So right now, my life is ChatGPT all day long is open on the desktop. ChatGPT is also in my text. It is in there intentionally so that for the past 6 months, it learns my style. It can track my viewing history, so that when I give it my thoughts and I say, write this proposal in a comprehensive and compelling way for someone, it can come out the way I need it to. And then I go back and I filter it as well needingly and take out the roboticness of it. But it's that gap in between, that the time waste is what I now call it, which was production prior. Because again, it's that proof of concept. It's like, could I sit down and research for 8 hours? I'm a nerd. I love doing that. I could research a topic for 7 hours or 8 hours, but how much more can I get done with my life? How much more can I be home with my kids? How much more can I have a higher quality of life and have a higher productivity of profession?
It's a great question, and I love it, and it makes me want to dive into AI more. My biggest fear, and not to be a doomist or anything, but as I think about algorithms that are that on social media, for instance, and the echo chamber that we're seeing in social media, where historically for hundreds of years, people would come together in the village or the town, and they'd have different perspectives and they'd speak to each other. And now the algorithms are just sort of showing the content that we're responding to. And so we're in these echo chambers of believing that our view of the world is accurate, and having a really hard time talking to other people who equally think that their world of view is accurate. And I just wonder how we overcome that, and how we could utilize AI as a tool to foster more interconnectedness versus enhancing the echo chamber effect.
Is when we can release the administrative tools of life, those things that are time wastes, and we can actually focus and be present in the moment that we're in to absorb the actual moment. That actually could be a success of humanity that we've never seen since the Industrial Revolution. So we've been busy doing. If we can all of a sudden push the doing off and be present, what could we create? We could create some sort of thing that we don't even exist and know right now. And I don't mean some fantasy. I mean just some organization or some concept of programming or something like that. I don't know. But the fact is, using technology and keeping it in its place as a tool. Now, in the flip side, I'm 100% with you, and I'm selfishly as a marketer and things like that. The data, the algorithm, it's dangerous. It is a dangerous, siloed societal look that takes away the concept of talking to each other. So my point and what I'm trying to say is, I feel like technology has drilled us into a brain and stemming place where we don't understand the power of civil discourse, because technology has drilled us into our silos of our communication. With that said, if we can open up creativity and open up conversations where humans can look at humans as a human and say, we're together in this world, let's find some way that you and I can meet, and understand that we might go through 3 or 4 uncomfortable conversations to get there. Yep. But when we get there, it's going to be magical.
I love that. And it reminds me of, and I don't know who I read a lot and take a lot of information from people, but I do a poor job of attributing it to them. But someone said, as we evaluate technology and thinking about bringing it into our lives, we must continue to ask ourselves whether they represent improved means to unimproved ends. and deciding whether to adopt that technology and looking at the framework of, is it just going to make us more busy, or is it actually improving the human condition? And technology is inherently neutral, but how we use it isn't. And so I think, like, as people think about intention behind technology, that's a really important thing. Bonfire, total tangent, but Bonfire, we have 2 Black board members who, when we created our original algorithm, were like, dude, historically Black people have been, through algorithms, like, have been steered to the other side of the tracks and shit like that. Like, you need to think about all these different perspectives if you're going to be making recommendations of investments and where people should live, but then we've evolved to more commercial real estate. Like you have to think about intention and design. You can't just assume that the algorithm is going to be, perfectly agnostic. And it was a really, really big eye opener, because there's just the importance of intention in anything, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is critical.
And that goes with everything that I think you all do with Bonfire, in looking at what you're working with the real estate and everything like that. Your entire business is built on a strong community. If it's not a strong community, there's no real estate, there's no investment desire. It's from a capitalist standpoint. From a human being standpoint, somebody else looks at it as an opportunity, which you do as well, I'm sure, in other areas as well. They are intertwined in the same. And I think that a lot of people have lost, I'm going to say a lot of people, me at different times in my life, have lost the understanding and the power that the community that surrounds your business and the community that surrounds your life, it directly affects your life, whether or not it bumps into you every day. And I think we've lost the understanding of how interconnected our lives are, and taking a step back and looking at kind of the ecosystem of communication and the ecosystem of the transfer of data between human beings to human beings, as well as through technology. Without the strength, the foundation of intellect and community and bonding and human beings interacting with each other, there's no content that fuel the data.
100%. And I would just take it a step further and say, I mean, we're inherently social creatures. And, I grew up in a place like LA, where it was a very wealthy place, and everyone had their houses and their gates, and none of the neighbors knew each other. And then I lived in Nepal in college, in a village with no electricity, no running water. And our house had people coming in and out all the time. Everyone was a cousin. I don't have a fucking clue who was biologically related or not, but they had this interconnectedness, this, like, we have each other's back. I didn't see any homeless people in Nepal. I'm not saying they don't exist, but, like, people would rally together and help each other. Versus in the States, we're often very disconnected from one another. And why? And what are the sort of outputs of that? Well, we have a lot of obesity and depression and just, like, all these symptoms of something not being completely in alignment with ourselves. In terms of the depression and the divorce rates and all these things that represent separateness from each other. And community is everything, man. It really is. I mean, Bonfire, the reason why we chose that name was the idea of people coming together around a fire who might not know each other, right? But they share in this warmth together.
Love it.
That was the entire reason behind it.
I love it. And you'll then, all right, we'll trade brand names then. So FreeMind, I started in 2008, the business that is this. So it's been around for a long time, and it's exactly the same thing. And it's funny that I didn't realize it until I was saying this about AI. FreeMind was me going to companies and corporations and saying, give me all the tasks you don't want and I'll free your mind so you can think about bigger things. So I took all the mundane tasks off of them so that they could think of the bigger picture. And this is 2008, 2009, 2010. I worked with owners of companies and corporations. And I'm actually viscerally experiencing this right now in the moment with you, that I just explained for AI to do what I was doing 20 years ago. And that is a real realization in the moment. So
I love it. Full circle,
Exactly. Although they couldn't take the dry cleaning out and do my one boss's Mercedes as well as I did, but that's another story.
Not yet.
Yeah. I want to talk about while we're in the aspect of kind of emotional intelligence and perseverance. Talk through fundraising and balance. Now, what I mean by fundraising and balance is your sanity. I want to say, when you're going through a fundraising round, And that being whether it's successful or not, every day you're walking in, like people talk about, oh, that interview was so hard. That interview was so hard. It doesn't matter if you're fundraising for $500 or you're fundraising for $500 million. It is, you're opening yourself up to the world every single time you open that door and start that meeting. Talk to me about the emotional intelligence, whether it be compartmentalization or however it is, that you keep yourself focused on the goal at hand through stressful times like a fundraising round.
It's an incredible question, and I don't think that I've done it well, if I'm being honest. The last 18 months of Bonfire has in some ways been the most stressful experience of my life. It's led me to realize that I was completely out of balance physically, mentally, spiritually. I did a month retreat, a sabbatical to Nepal last year, and climbed the Annapurna circuit because I was burnt out. And I realized that I was having some really unhealthy habits related to caffeine and alcohol consumption, and I stopped drinking and began a path towards sobriety. So, the thing about fundraising specifically is it requires one to really go beyond their own ego and tolerate rejection left and right. And being ghosted and just all these things that as a sensitive person, my proclivity or tendencies are to take them personally. And there's a wonderful book called The Four Agreements. And one of the Four Agreements is this Toltec wisdom book, from northern Mexico. And it talks about don't take anything personally. And I really want to embody that. I haven't done it yet, but it's like on my life roadmap to embody that because fuck, man, it's like, so it requires taking nothing personally and just saying, you know what we're offering is an amazing opportunity to be a partner in a business that's going to change the world. And it's an energetic connection. And if that person isn't seeing it or on board, it's on to the next person. Like that's the mentality that I need to have. And on my better days, I have it, and on my other days, I'm like, I've fucking known this guy for 20 years. He's, going through due diligence with us and has completely ghosted me. And I can't get a fucking
best. Those are the best. Like I've had people that I've flown places with. I've been in their homes. I've hugged their grandchildren, and you can't even get a text back.
They've just completely gone AWOL. Like for weeks and then months. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? And so those are the harder ones, because I'm like, fuck, what, I start playing in my mind, what could I have done differently, or did I offend them, or, but
and then our brains are probably the same in this. Now you're beating yourself up. So our addict brains are, you're such an asshole. You're such a blah, blah, blah. You're not deserving of this. And then you're in a whole different spiral than somebody else who just is dealing with the one thing. And that's just crucial. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to be with you there in that moment and let you know that it's exactly that. It is a beat up, tear up situation.
And that's why things like Buddhism and Stoicism are really helpful for me, where I can turn to acceptance, the serenity prayer in recovery. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? Accepting that which is outside, that I have no control over things that I have no control over, and not spending too much mental time, ruminating over those things. So the long and the short is creating Bonfire and a previous, the entrepreneurial journey is a spiritual journey, as is everything in life, as is our romantic relationships, our friendships, our work, I believe that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And so when we do things for me creating, co-creating Bonfire, it's like I'm signing up for a lot of ups and downs. And in the downs is when I learn more about myself. And so yeah, it's definitely contributed significantly to my spiritual practice.
I think that there's a time where I can say that in the past, since December 26, 2023, when I officially decided, I finally got on the real consistency of sobriety, those same thoughts came in there, and not the negative ones. The when you begin to shed those people in your life that nothing wrong to them, but It's just that your situations and your recreations in your life doesn't align anymore, and everybody serves this beautiful purpose and this beautiful chapter in your life, and everybody was there, and you're only here because of all those chapters prior. But when you begin to shed those people and you begin to then see yourself differently, and you begin to experience yourself, it's well, it's a lot of nights in the dark, that's for sure, but it's also a lot of nights in the light. And I want to say that is like the way that you can look at yourself differently. And I think that what you're doing in the position you're in with the business that you have and the life focus that you have, it's really powerful. And I'm so excited to follow your journey, because with that, I think that brings the power more than any money in the world. Is the fact that you don't have to have a dollar, but if you have the ability to communicate human to human, and you have the self understanding and an inventory to be empathetic and to help somebody else, because like I said in the beginning, we're talking about capital and we're talking about money and funding, but at the end of the day, you and I both, the majority of these businesses don't exist because somebody got burned out. And a lot of times statistics will say capital funding or something like that, but we know and then what happens is, this is the worst part. You have someone that, let's say 6 months to a year, had the ignited, I'll use the pun, had a bonfire of ideas and emotions and energy, ran through the world, bursted everything, couldn't pick up from that first door slam, that first, foreclosure, that forced, cars in the tow truck, that moment when you couldn't look past that to keep going forward and went back and took that job to check the box and to go back to a stable life. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. But what I need people to understand is, a lot of times I hear from my end, oh, I didn't have the money to do it. And I've said that before from my ventures that have failed. But in my recent life and looking back, it didn't have a fucking thing to do with the money. The money only works if the situation and the foundation and the philosophy works.
I'm going to tell you a story, and I 100% relate to that, okay? And just to riff off that for a second. Folks might or might not have heard of a guy named Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Now, Man's Search for Meaning was based upon his experience in, call it 1944, 45 in Auschwitz, where he lost his parents, his wife, and his children to the hands of the Nazis, okay? And he said two things that were quite profound. One is that every single thing can be taken away from a human being except one indelible freedom, and that is the freedom to choose how one's going to interpret a given situation. And he chose, inside this horrible conditions, to be a source of loving kindness to not just the other prisoners, but to the guards and just every single person in his life. That was his choice. And he said that as long as a human being has a why, he or she will always find a how, right? So as long as we're connected to our mission and what our calling is, we'll always find a way, right? I think where founders get caught up is sometimes believing either chasing the money and thinking that some sort of magic money an amount of money will ever buy happiness or fulfillment, or just basically losing connection to this thing that's bigger than ourselves. And making it about their ego and I look, I'm guilty of that too. Like, there's been times where when Bonfires hit some setbacks, I've taken it really personally.
Well, and that's the thing is, here's the part that you can't feel guilty about. And this is what I'm coming to terms with personally. And it sounds like you as well. Those ego moments, and that term gets labeled over those self-confidence moments sometimes. And we lose the celebration of a moment of self-confidence because we label it as egotistical. But that's the only way we get past the hurdle. And arrogance and cockiness does not exist. And I can tell you one person, as I'm 38 years old, I have lived the analog life and I've lived the digital life. I've lived the workaholic corporate man to the now tech where we are right now. I've worked for both people, and I've become pieces of both people. Where I find my unique perspective is bridging that together to realizing the toxicity of what exists in both. And then having my path is what is going to be the best of both. Because I believe in analog for a certain aspect of life, and I believe in digital. I believe they need to exist and they need to be balanced. And I think that that's something that comes with that. And what I mean by the man in the suit and the t-shirt and jeans is every aspect of that. Whether it's the toxic masculinity that comes from the younger days when I was brought up in my early 20s, I did not live a life that I was proud of. And as one of those that I do not blame those people that I looked up to, but there were people that I looked up to that I don't look up to anymore. And I won't name their names, and that's not what this is all about. But it took years of understanding that the harm that was being done, that they were doing as well as others, because I thought it was normal, because that was what was being enforced in front of me. That was what was being forced in the media. That's what all the cool movies were. That's all the cool TV shows. And then I ran into a situation where I was a vice president of this now company in my late 20s. You can imagine where I'm going with this.
Yep.
The spiral ensues.
and I can really relate to that part of your journey. I had a similar one where I was 24 years old, living in London, running a subdivision at the second largest record label on earth, playing in an instrumental hip hop band, and really insecure in a lot of ways, and a toxic male, and did things that I'm not proud of and hurt people, and I've had to really reconcile my past in that way. And I think maybe where you were going with this, and maybe not, is around acceptance and not beating ourselves up for the past, but doing our best to learn and have our lives, or at least mine, try to be a living amends. That doesn't mean I'm not going to fuck up and continue to fuck up, but it's like, how can I, make an amends for the past and have my daily commitment be, to be as good of a human being as I can. And when I fuck up, make an amends and learn from it.
It's those little things in life. It's the there was a book, I'm losing the author, but when I was in high school, he came and spoke, or at alumni weekend or something like that. It was Never Eat Alone. And
yes.
in this moment, I can't remember his name, but I'll put it up here in production. And if you've read it, obviously, and if nobody else has, if you have not read it, it's a great and an awesome book. And one of the things that it does is it teaches you about networking and the importance of that intimacy, and never eat alone, meaning like if you're going and it's just a cup of coffee, go grab a cup of coffee with somebody, even if it's just 15 minutes. You never know what experience or what learning lesson is going to come out of those 15 minutes. This was a pre-COVID book. I'm talking 15 years ago, maybe plus. I actually recently have come back to that book, and I think that the philosophy of that is something that needs to be there. And one of the things that that's what also inspired this podcast, because with the world remotely the way it was, and I was doing remote sales in 2017 when nobody knew it was, and everybody thought I was crazy. So, now here we are. But with that said, the ability for you and I that we would never cross paths ever. And the fact that we can sit here and within 33 minutes, we're where we are. I mean, I'm ready. I mean, if we were sitting next to each other, I'd be hugging you.
Totally. Vice versa.
And I want people to see that power. And that's what I don't want people to look at this as like, oh, they're bragging about their lives. No, we're not. We're telling you the grit, the grime, the beautiful, the rain, the snow, the droughts. But also at the end of the day, it's the human perseverance that you need. And that human perseverance that is the only inhibitor to that growth.
100% agree with you. And for me, a lot of my journey towards being able to be open to a conversation like this, because maybe years ago I wouldn't. Right?
I would never have this conversation. I'd be like 300 pounds. When you see me somewhere, this is not a conversation you would be having.
Right. Totally. And I'm not, but like I am pretty closed off, and, and I think for me, coming to a place of learning, and this is therapy, right? This is sobriety. This is different kinds of therapy. It's talk therapy. It's psychedelic therapy. It's a lot of different internal work I've done to come to a place where I now trust people and I trust the universe. And I really believe that everyone at their core has, some form of Buddha nature or a desire to be awakened, or a desire to have love, or a desire to have happiness and fulfillment. And that many of us wear a mask, right? And I fucking put on defenses left and right. But when I can take a deep breath and be like, oh, this person isn't trying to fuck me over, I can let down my guard, right? And I feel like we all have that potential. And and because we are a community, we are social beings, we are inspired by each other, and I've been inspired by so many other people who are vulnerable, who are open, who are available men, who have open hearts. And that doesn't make them less masculine. It's just shown me that I can allow that side to come through too.
You can evolve. And that's the thing, is everybody can evolve. Everybody says, oh, people don't change. And this is cliche, but it's true. It's because I don't want to. I didn't get sober until I wanted to get sober. Everybody else wanted me to get sober years before I wanted to get sober. But I never saw it until I wanted to. And that was selfish of me. And I own that selfishness, but also that's also what is fueling what's going on. And that's the natural fuel there. I took a week ago, I was sitting in the ocean and down in Florida, and I was literally sitting in the ocean, and I was watching, the shrimp come out, and then a barracuda came by me, a little baby barracuda, then a stingray came out, and then this turtle came out, and I'm not joking, like this little other fish came out, and I was watching the way that they all interact with each other, and it was just amazing to sit back and watch them all interact, knowing that they don't share, or at least what we think, they don't share the same language. And they all know what each other needs. And I know that there's innate instinctual things for insects, and all the scientists can get in, and I welcome the jokes. But watching the beauty of them communicate and work together to make their day as productive as possible was really inspiring, is all I'm getting at.
I 100% agree. And Nate, do you have kids?
I have 6 kids.
Whoa, amazing.
My wife and I are on our second marriage. So she had 4 and I had 2. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So my wife and I, we have 1, and we're one and done. I'm a bit older than you. And so I was with my 5-year-old over the weekend, and there's this place in Denver she goes, and it's called Candyland. And it's like this just chaotic, fun kids place. Like, I don't even know how else to describe it. Yeah. And it was amazing to watch her. Because there's bigger kids, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, there's younger kids, and they're all running, but none of them are hitting each other. Like, they all are, and none of them, like, they're not communicating the way we are, but they're all in this like flow of play, and it's like little kids know how to play, and they're not. I don't know. There's something about like the way that the animals, and you're talking about in the ocean, can kind of interoperably play with each other, connect, not play, but like coexist.
It's the communicate, it's the channeling, it's just existing. It's existing within your own lanes without like interjecting with it. It was just wild to see. And I appreciate what you're saying about the kids thing. And that's the flow state part is where this has started. And I'll credit James Tan from Yerba Mate, who was on this episode, and their philosophy is your flow, find your flow state. And ever since I had that episode with him, it's been burned into my brain, and it's like been played in on a daily basis. And I appreciate the way you just said that, because that's where it's been my way too, is like finding that flow, because once you're in your flow and everybody else is in their flow, you're gravy, man.
It's so funny you bring up flow. I just finished a book called The Big Leap. I don't know if folks have heard of it before. Nice. And it talks about this idea of the upper limit problem. Okay. And it's this idea that we all want to feel flow. And I believe every single human being has an innate genius and something that, the gift that they want to give into the world. But many of us, and I'm going to speak for myself, I've felt unworthy. I felt like I'm not good enough. And so we have this thing, many of us have this thing called upper limit problem where, things are going really well in our lives and we find a way to sabotage it, right? In the book, one example he gives is Bill Clinton, top of the world. The guy's fucking president of the United States, and he has an affair with an intern, right? But like you see it, Kurt Cobain. I mean, there's just so many examples of people who are just not, they shrink when they reach the top of this flow state. And I'm really exploring in my personal life of like I've had a cold this weekend. I feel fine now, but I'm like, like where in the book talks about like, if you get sick, like if you don't usually get sick and you get sick, it might be interesting to look at like what emotionally is going on too. Yeah. Like, are you upper limiting yourself or not? And because I love the flow state, and I want to get more of it. And I'm also looking at what blocks am I putting up towards having more of it in my life.
I think that's the most crucial piece, is kind of seeing it and then allowing it to be a place of every day, of all day, taking that placement and being like, how does flow affect my relationship with my children? How does my flow affect, because for me, my lives with my wife and I are completely different. I'm me, and you can look me up and see all the things about me. I'm very transparent for 20 years, and I exist online, good, bad, and ugly. So it is, there's nothing there. But my wife is a clinical manager and labor and delivery in a hospital right down the street. So her life and my life could not be polarly different. Our brains also work polarly different, and the way that we admittedly, we struggle sometimes on a communication level when emotion comes in. So when emotions are in and stress is high, we struggle to communicate. And that is because our brains come from different areas. And we every day are working harder and harder to communicate, because just like we feel like teenagers, because we're only 2 years married now. We were in Florida the other week for our anniversary. So we're both older, in our late, she's a little older than me, but it's she'll kill me for saying that. I'll have to cut that on the post-production. But it's what I'm trying to say is that what everything we're talking about here is not some get rich quick thing. It's not some go out and live the world. It's not some, you don't have to go write a book. It are simple, rudimentary things of life. And I don't mean rudimentary as the basic things you should know. I'm admitting basic things I didn't know until recently. And because my life was so busy, and what you're saying about the running and all this stuff, I've only learned since I stopped recently and slowed down what this is. So I, as well as, I'm not going to speak for you, but it seems the same way, am not in a place where I'm standing on a soapbox telling people this is how I did it and this is how you should do it. What I'm doing is, and you are as well, is standing on that soapbox and saying, this is how I did it. You can do it too. Find your way. And my mom told me this one time when I told her about different things, and my parents had grown up across the street from each other. So they literally, the driveways met, they dated their whole, and even to the point where my dad's brother and my mom's sister dated in high school as well. They went on double dates and then they got married. So I have cousins that are on both sides. Anyway, it's not as twisted of a tree as it seems. But what I'm trying to get at is, my parents, I can never look to my parents as a reflection of what marriage means, because my parents have had a different life. They grew up together. They grew together. They knew how to handle conflict resolution together. They handled all their experiences together differently. My mom only recently in the past year said something to me that gave me this freedom. And she literally said to me, because she could tell I was struggling, and she just straight up said, it doesn't have to be like everybody else's. It can just be yours.
I love that. It's so profound on so many levels, because I feel like a lot of my pain in my life, growing up in a place like LA, where a lot, it's like LA is a place where people compare themselves to each other, and you might drive a Bentley, but your neighbor drives a Rolls Royce, and that's not enough, right? Not you, but and so I think the removing of the comparativeness and realizing that every single human being, each of us, is on our own journey. We've had our own upbringings, we've had our own trials and tribulations, and we are unique, and we're all figuring it out ourselves. And there's no need to compare ourselves to anyone else. And that's really freeing, I think, for us individually to say, you know what, I'm on my path and I'm going to define what happiness means or wealth or whatever myself. It's also freeing to the human species, because then it's like, I don't need to judge other people, right? I don't need to project my shit onto others and say, oh, you're living a good life or not. It's like, no, that person's a unique person and they're making the decisions that are right for them in that moment. I'm going to respect that, because they know their life better than I know their life, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I love that. I just want to sit in that for a minute, man. That's powerful.
Well, it stemmed from what you just shared, man, around what what your mom said. It's like yeah.
That's the thing, is I wish there was a way, and we're in different places in our lives from a million reasons, but here is where we're the same. And I think that the hardest thing is for aspiring entrepreneurs or people that are in the grit, or even just not even an entrepreneur, just a single mom or a single dad that just is going every day and is getting hit in the face every single day and is still going. That is the same grit. That is the same determination. And it's something that if everybody could understand that keeping that alive and keeping that spark alive is the only path to any success. And it's the only path to any happiness. Because the second that spark dies, and I've been there, I've been on the couch for weeks at a time, you know, it's stagnant. And you can begin to root yourself in that state.
And I agree. And I think that one of the things that we're need to confront as a society right now is, you know, if you look in the last 20 years at how much wealth the 1% now accumulates and how fucking hard it is for people to move up the economic ladder and own a house, which historically is the biggest, you know, source of wealth generation in people's lives. Why? Because you buy a house for $100,000, you put $20,000 down, and it goes up, you know, 7% a year. And because of compound growth, it's not your 20% that's growing up, you know, 20,000 you put down that's going up 7%. It's the entire 100,000, right? So, you know, it's a great path of wealth generation, but that's no longer available to most people. And so you have all these, I think, you know, young people and people middle-aged and older who work really hard and are barely getting by, right? There's some crazy statistic, like 40 or 50% of Americans could not make a $1,000, if they had an emergency and they needed $1,000 for it, they couldn't come up with it, right? And so, like, I totally understand why people zone out and tune out and numb out. I mean, whether it's through alcohol or porn or eating or sugar or, like, I do all those things, right? Because this fucking world is stressful.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's like when people are like, oh, you know, these addicts or the homeless, it's like people are suffering, people are having a hard time. You know, what people need is a fucking hug, not more criticism and more judgment. You know, like, how can we help each other?
That's what it comes down to. I just recently on Saturday published an article on the website about 4 years ago, and this is the first time I'm publicly talking about this, other than the article I put up. But on March 16th of 2020, I had two sheriffs show up at my front door. I had just been not yet officially divorced, but my wife at the time and I were going out our separate ways, and she was out of the house. Two sheriffs at the door ready to serve me foreclosure payment, or were serving me foreclosure. March 16th, 2020. I just, for the past 2 weeks, had racked up a 10x revenue expectation for the year with the contracts I locked in. All of a sudden, the two police officers at 7:30 in the morning serve me papers for foreclosure. I'm confident. I go, hey, there's no big deal. I got all these contracts I just signed over the past 2 weeks. I'm good to go. Then the phone calls come and the texts come. The whole world starts shutting down. All my contracts are tied to beer breweries, distilleries, selling to bars and restaurants. And all of a sudden, I'm holding on the foreclosure papers, and then I got my phone in the other hand, and I lost it. I lost it. And my wife now was my girlfriend at the time. I lost it. And it was like, I think one of the first times I actually lost it in front of her. And she's a veteran Coast Guard, strongest woman I've ever met in my life. And she just basically was like, you can't wallow like you did before. I got laid off years before that. And she knew the story. She wouldn't know me at that time, but I lost 6 months of my life just being depressed after that layoff. Yeah. And she's like, you can't do this again. You just can't. And 24 hours later, the article's on our website, but 24 hours later, I called a distillery down the street. We started making commercial sanitizer, selling it nationally, coast to coast. I then had a PPE portfolio and was working at that whole market, connecting manufacturers to healthcare, pharmacies, and all that. And it turned into like one of the craziest couple of years of my life. Also one of the most PTSD ones in my life, because every morning I woke up, pulled up a heat map, And where I drove the emails and phone calls with my call center teams was wherever the densest population of PPE need was, and deaths and everything like that. So every day my objective was to fill the heat map of trauma. And, as I'm doing this, and my wife's going upstairs to go to the hospital. So this house was intense during COVID, but it was a beautiful intensity because we got to see each other in a different way. And to this day, she still is, my biggest support. And everybody says, behind every great man's a strong woman. I don't believe in the gender part about it. I just believe there's a strong person that everybody needs, is what I'm trying to say. And not everybody. A lot of people see me or talk to me and I'm 6'3", almost 300 pounds. And they're like, oh, but I would be nothing without the people in my life.
100% agree with you. 100% agree with you. What you just shared reminds me of this wonderful Japanese proverb. It's very simple, and it's fall down 10 times, get up 11 times. And it's easier said than done, and it really requires a support system. When COVID happened, our daughter was 2, and the daycare shut down, and I had to go into daddy daycare, and I was working on a previous idea of Bonfire. And I was like, I'm going to shut down. And my board was like, don't shut down. Just take a minute. World's in a really funky place. And you never know. A different idea might emerge. And they were right. And it just, all the cliches, I mean, not all of them, but some are true. Like, it takes a fucking village to raise a child. It takes a village for all of us to uplift us. And the reality is none of us, we're not alone. And we there's, to your point around never eat alone, like, even if we don't have good relations with our parents, if we don't, there's probably people listening who aren't married or have children, maybe they don't have a huge friend group, but maybe there's, their church, or there's other communities that they can get involved with. And I just noticed, for me, my depressive qualities and tendencies caused me to isolate, which reinforced the depression, yeah, so I appreciate you sharing that, man.
My last thing, and I won't go over it all in time. I want to connect on one more thing. I think I don't know enough about it because I saw it on your LinkedIn. The Now Project. Now we're switching gears from heady existential conversation to, I also had artisanal threads. I had a t-shirt business. So let's talk about the business of apparel.
Well, I got to tell you what the origin of the Now Project was.
Yes, that's what I wanted to get at. Yeah.
So it's a long story, but basically I'd lived in London. I was working at the label. My life was great. And Sony BMG tried to sponsor me. They fucked up the application. I got booted from London. Okay. Moved back to LA. And I had basically a roommate. My mom's friend's son was an entrepreneur, and he had a day job, and he had a trademark for a word that for a watch that didn't tell time, but said the word now on it. And I was really into 2 books at that time: Ram Dass's Be Here Now,
nice,
and Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. And probably because I lived so far in my head and in the future and the past, that I knew that I needed to bring the present moment into my life more. So we ended up starting a company called the Now Project that was, at first, it was these Now watches that didn't tell time, that evolved into an entire jewelry collection, and then an apparel company that was using organic materials and water-based dyes. This is before the organic phase, which was wildly unprofitable.
Was it the water-based discharged ink? I think it was called, or something like that.
Yep.
That's what we used on ours too. So inefficiently expensive.
So inefficient on so many different levels. And then
cool.
So cool. And then on top of that, we were really inspired by Tom's shoes and their 1-for-1 model, where they would, you'd buy a pair of shoes and they'd give a pair of shoes to someone in the developing world. So we had the idea of bringing yoga to at-risk teens in Southern California. Like, every time someone bought a product, we could fund a yoga class, and we made a documentary about it. We brought yoga to a pregnant girls' school near Compton. We brought it to a really kind of disadvantaged school in South LA, like just different places we brought yoga to. And when we saw how it was inspiring people's lives, and then the 2008 recession came and completely swallowed us.
Ours was called artisanal threads, and the phrase was, "We give a shirt." So every shirt we sold, we donated a shirt and socks to the local homeless shelters.
Cool.
So, it's same kind of thing though. My vision at that time, 2011 maybe is this. So yeah, right around that time. So I graduated college at the time where nobody wanted to hire you. So I think that, along with, I always had an entrepreneurial mindset, but I think exactly that time frame of what you're talking about too, in finance world and things like that, sparked it up. But hey, long story short, I will. I want to thank you, Joshua, from the bottom of my heart. I mean that seriously. This has been an incredible time that you've given me. I am going to confidently say that this is not the last conversation we are going to have.
I just want to say thank you, Nate. I really appreciate your authenticity, openness, vulnerability, and just how you foster connection. And I'm honored to have met you today and look forward to knowing you the rest of my life. So thank you.
Seriously, Joshua, thank you so much for being open. Thank you for telling your story.
Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon.
Are you looking for a way to grow your business, reach new customers, and increase your sales? If so, you need the FreeMind Group. Founded in 2008 and a provider of creative and strategic solutions for the food and beverage industry. Whether you need branding, marketing, product development, or innovation, the FreeMind Group can help you achieve your goals and unleash your potential. Visit our website at thefreemindgroup.com and get a free consultation today. Thank you for listening and see you next time.